You are now listening to the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, the Going North podcast. I'm your host, certified self-leadership trainer and author of the best-selling book, Stay the Course, Dom Brightman. And you're going to be getting some goodies today from the guest that's up next. And today on the Highlight Reel Builder for Authors, known as the Going North podcast, we got one heck of a super special, awesome guest for you today because, my goodness, courtesy of my fellow Virgo author David Wood. My goodness, we are in for a treat, y'all, a freaking treat, because my goodness, today's guest, my goodness, a psychologist that's worked as a corporate trainer and relationship coach for 55 years. You heard that right, folks, 55 years. My goodness, that's at least 3 Bibles, y'all. A former professor at the University of Massachusetts and a frequent guest lecturer at Harvard, Stanford, and UCLA, and the author of 12 books to boot. So my goodness, so preteen swag ahoy. And these books are on the topics of relationships and human communications. And her work has been featured in many popular magazines, just to name a few: New Woman, Psychology Today, Self, Harvard Business Review, Men's Health, New Age, and a boatload of others. And this super special, awesome human right here trains coaches and therapists throughout the US of A as well as Europe. So let's give it up for the one, the only, sensational, and celestial, because of all of her freaking wisdom, Dr. Susan Campbell. How you doing today, Susan?
I'm doing great, Dom. Thanks for having me on your show.
Yeah, it's a plum please, a pleasure to have you, because my goodness, anybody David would recommend, it's like, man, I guess they gotta be like platinum in a land of copper, like it's gonna be good. So 55 years, relationship coaching, like what got you into that? Because I'm pretty sure that wasn't on your radar officially years ago.
Well, in a way, it has been since I was a teenager. People would come to me with their problems about their relationships. And because even when we're teenagers, we have relationship problems, right? And I got the reputation for somebody who could keep people's confidences and for somebody who wasn't judgmental. So I just started doing some kind of counseling from a very early age, and finally went ahead and got a PhD. I never really thought I'd go as far as getting a doctor's degree, but well, I loved the field. I loved learning. And so once you get the PhD, then your learning really begins, because you've got a ticket to take on a lot of challenging work. And so, like you said, I've been doing this for 55 years, working with teams and couples and families in conflict, and individuals who are, in a sense, in conflict with themselves, can't quite accept certain parts of themselves. So I try to help people love the parts of themselves that they started out rejecting, getting to know all your parts so you can be a more whole human being.
Ah, there you go. All the parts. That's right. Love handles and all, depending on the person, right?
Yeah, well, for some people, based on childhood wounds and that sort of thing, it's a little harder for them to love certain parts of themselves. But this new book that I wrote, From Triggered to Tranquil, gives a map of 5 steps to learning how to go from taking things personally when people don't treat you the way you might like them to treat you, and going from that state of, oh, you know, they're rejecting me or they're abandoning me, which is, a very normal and tender reaction, more so for some people than others. But when a relationship's really important to you, sometimes you do give it maybe a little more weight, like the look on your partner's face or their tone of voice. You give it a little more weight than maybe is warranted some of the time. But just because it isn't warranted doesn't mean it's not a useful reaction. So if I get my rejection button pushed, oh, that person doesn't want to spend time with me, and I start to feel that low feeling, losing my energy, I'm not attractive, I'll never get what I want, and you start to feel kind of down. I give a program where people can start with any painful situation and learn from it. If you pause and really look into the feelings and the thoughts that come up around that, and then you'll finally get some memories coming up around that, you can find out what faulty learning was there in your childhood that you can now correct, because you can be a good mother or a good parent to yourself. You can start doing that at any age. And so this program that I teach is basically how to reparent yourself and give yourself what some of us didn't get enough of when we were children.
I freaking love it indeed. Definitely love it indeed. And it's actually powerful and pretty interesting how, like, just the faulty learning, like those two words together, like, it's definitely something that really should be brought more to the forefront. Because, yeah, like, for those who've been blessed enough to have parents, like,
Mhm.
parents are great, but at the same time, especially, well, to be honest, from the beginning to now, not all parents are perfect and they just do the best that they can. And sometimes some things happen out of their control and then it affects us as we become adults and they just stay with us for so long. And just the wonderful work that you're doing and helping other folks to do to really go back into the past and try to deal with those things to go from trigger to tranquil. So that is freaking amazing.
Yeah. And most intimate relationships or relationships with your like adult kids and those kind of things, because they're so important to us, anytime there's a disconnection between myself and somebody else, or it seems like there's a disconnection, like seeming to hear criticism, and maybe it is criticism or judgment, and most people don't like criticism and judgment, and so that's a kind of disconnection, and any disconnection will trigger your brain. And this is what people need to understand, is how to understand our own nervous system will trigger something in the brain that's called the survival alarm system. And every human has this in the amygdala area of the brain. It's that part of the brain that processes emotions. Every human has this area in the brain that kind of has a negative bias. It's scanning for danger because it's in charge of your physical survival. And it came online in human evolution long time ago, when physical survival was really a daily issue. There were predators. Now, physical survival is not the issue, but it's that disconnection with somebody who is important to you that you depend on. That feels to some of us like a survival issue. Like, I've actually had the experience where I'm kind of falling in love with somebody and they say they'll call me and then they don't call me. And I'm going around all panicked and I'm going, Susan, you're treating this like a survival issue. And that is a very normal human thing. And so that's called being triggered. And we all have that part of our brain that gets easily triggered until we understand that those trigger reactions are normal. You don't have to cover them up and pretend it's not there, because then you'll never learn to deal with them. Better to admit, oh, I'm starting to get triggered. I'm having this survival reaction when the only thing that happened was he didn't call me. And I then learned how to calm my nervous system by some breathing practices that I teach in the book, some grounding practices like feeling your seat on the chair, your feet on the ground, feeling yourself being held by gravity or by the chair. There's different practices that help you get from that agitated place in your nervous system to a calm, safe place. And then your decisions will come not from that reactive reptile part of the brain, fight, flight, freeze, let me protect myself, that sort of thing. It'll move. Once you're calm, your reactions will move to your prefrontal cortex, which is the part of the brain that we all want to be coming from as much of the time as we can. That's the part that can have empathy for other people, that can cooperate, even listen to people's points of view that are different from our own. these are the really important survival skills in today's complex world with so much diversity and such rapid change, so much information. So we really need to have quick access to that prefrontal cortex so we can make good decisions, have a happy life.
Oh yeah, you could definitely say that again. And my goodness, complex world is right because my goodness, yeah, like especially with the word triggered, and I'm glad you actually put that word in the title because that seems to be a word that sometimes can be thrown around a lot
Mhm.
when some people may have had a little easier growing up than some other people. And the thing is, you can't really sometimes measure because a lot of folks, older folks, be like, "Man, when I was your age, we had to freaking dodge bullets. Like you just have to dodge bullets in a video game and stuff like that." It's like, it's still just have to acknowledge like, hey, there's still a generational difference and tapping into that survival brain, like just that
Yeah.
instinct when it's really, even though in the bigger picture it shouldn't have to be that way, we're still really trained that way in a way, and your book is helping folks to really tap into that, especially with the activities in it. And I'm not mistaken, there's like an activity in every chapter if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, even just reading the book kind of guides you to, okay, now I'm supposed to think of a time when I got triggered. Okay, if you just sort of follow along in the book, you learn to gradually be able to tolerate. First, you start with tolerating the memory of painful interpersonal incidents, and then you practice, okay, I'm having a memory of this. I'm consciously and voluntarily bringing back this painful incident when my partner walked out on me when I was really needing some attention and some love. They just walked out. They said, oh, I don't have time for you right now. And maybe there was some legitimate reason. Maybe they weren't really trying to be mean, although that the way I said it sounds a little mean. But sometimes they're not even, they're just saying, I gotta go. I gotta, get to work. I got a big deal tomorrow that I've got to work on. And of course, they're not trying to be mean, but that will feel so terrible to us that we have to learn how to, we can't always do it very well when we're in the moment. So we have to learn when we're outside the moment, you go back and work with memories. And then you go, okay, while I'm remembering that, my nervous system's starting to feel the same way it felt when he said that to me. Okay, I can teach myself to self-regulate. Self-regulate means self-calming, self-soothing, reassuring yourself that you're really safe, even though it does hurt. And what you eventually learn is how to tolerate more of the normal emotional pains of life or the normal emotional pains of an adult relationship. And as you kind of indicated, some of us are a little more sensitive than other people in terms of our nervous system going, ah. Some people
Mhm.
are just more cool, calm, and collected. But even those people, deep down, they may have some triggers that it will take a while for them to get to. Like a lot of the cool, calm people are what now is being called the avoidantly attached personality style. There's this
Mm.
whole area, the last 30 years, area of psychology called attachment theory. And there's a lot of research on attachment styles. And what that means is how you were parented when you were little, whether you were kind of neglected or whether you were smothered or whether your childhood needs were met kind of inconsistently. Those are the kind of things. And, I help people assess that in the book, how well were certain needs met, and help people realize that some people who were neglected got used to not depending on people, and they don't seem very triggerable because, I'm
Mhm.
used to depending on myself. So I'm not that disappointed when my partner says, hey, I'm going on a business trip, I'll see you in a couple of days. Other people's nervous systems are much more sensitive to any disruption, partly because some of them were inconsistently parented in terms of the availability of love and attention. So that would be more the anxious attachment. I never know when I'm going to get the goodies or when I'm not going to get the goodies, because there's this inconsistent pattern of rewards. And that can make people very vigilant. So what often happens in relationships when people pick partners is the anxious attached person will be attracted to the cool, calm, and collected avoidant attached, and vice versa. The avoidant will go, man, she's so vivacious and, energetic, and she's, emotionally available. And it brings kind of juice to the avoidant. And the anxious attachment goes, oh, he's so calm. I feel so safe and grounded and cared for when I'm with him. So, opposites will attract like that, so that they can really learn how to deal with somebody who's quite different than yourself. Because I believe relationships are a spiritual journey to get beyond that self-centered way of being in the world that says, well, this is the way people are, the way I am. Like if you say, I can't listen to you now, well, I would never say that to somebody. So if you say that, if somebody says that to me, they must hate me. Because we tend to want to, when we're not so sophisticated, we tend to just, well, if I did that, it would mean this. So he did that, that's what it must mean. And through the attachment information that I try to lay out in the book, and through looking at how the different types of childhood parenting styles have you be more or less sensitive to certain kinds of triggers, we get more sophisticated and we realize that this other human being, the way they behave isn't a mirror image of the way I behave or the way I process. And then you have to actually deal with reality instead of your projection of reality. So I believe that relationships are a spiritual journey for expanding beyond that egocentric, kind of naive view of how the world is and how people are. It's like, you're not the only person, you're not the center of the universe, kind of thing. You have to make room for a lot of other types. And that's annoying, it's inconvenient, but the world is full of a lot of different types.
Oh yeah, I could definitely say that again. I love the fact that you mentioned how relationships really are really more spiritual than anything else, and especially development aspect, because it's so darn true. Because the thing is, when we're on our own, especially the avoided attached, if I'm not mistaken, the double A, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Yeah,
The cool,
that's one side. Yeah.
yeah, the one side, it's like they may be that way to other people and to themselves 24/7, but if they get around the person with another type of personality, and it's like, oh, wow, they are actually a fire breathing dragon this whole time.
Yeah. Yeah. Like if I'm, well, I've grown up more the avoidant type. Okay. And I have tended to be attracted to people who are more, have their emotions closer to the surface. You could say they take their emotions too seriously and I don't take my emotions seriously enough, until we've done some personal work to address this. Because we can grow beyond where we started out. We can grow beyond our conditioning. But so I would be attracted to a person who would pop off with emotions in a very sudden way. And I was always cool, calm, and collected until I get with an intimate partner, an intimate partner who's my opposite type. And all of a sudden, I realize I'm starting to get really angry. And I realize underneath that, I'm really afraid to speak now. Then I start to walk on eggshells. And all of those things, the anger and also the fear, those are in me. That person isn't to blame. I needed that person to get to know what we call my shadow side. So a lot of times the spiritual purpose of why opposites attract and then later repel and have to work it out. The spiritual part is too, it's development. I'm developing more self-compassion. I'm developing more space for other kinds of people and their realities. and I'm becoming a bigger human being. That's the spiritual journey, really, is to expand your view until you eventually get to be able to see the world. And this would be the God's view, which no one ever gets to in one lifetime, where you just see, you see all different points of view. I mean, that would be where I would love to evolve to, is where I could see all points of view, not just my own narrow little ego thing. So that's part of this couple's journey. And I wrote a book called The Couple's Journey back in 1980, which kind of laid out relationship as a spiritual path. So people can still get that book too.
Oh, yeah. Yes, indeed. I had quite a few of your books to my reading list because I've read through a few chapters of this one too. From Trigger to Tranquil. Gotta freaking love it. Like, my goodness, indeed. It's definitely some good work you have to take your time with. It's not really a book that you can, like, blaze through. It's something you really have to really take your time, especially with the activities as well. I have not made set aside the time with it, and definitely got to make the time to do it. And you're so right, just like looking back at even lack of a better word, I guess, well, actually provoke some thoughts. I wouldn't say triggered some thoughts, but provoke some thoughts from childhood and things like that, of growing up with some friends and things like that. Heck, even running away from dogs at one point and things like that. So yeah, it's definitely a book that will provoke some thought and get you thinking.
Yeah, it'll get you a little bit uncomfortable, but you will learn to expand what you can deal with. And by the end of the book, I can deal with more discomfort. And that doesn't mean being a doormat or, being masochistic or taking abuse. I mean, healthy discomfort, like being able to listen to a viewpoint that's different from your own, because you'll never succeed in a relationship if you can't both listen and yet not completely lose yourself while you're listening. So that's one of the skills that people learn through doing this. We call it trigger work. The 5 steps of trigger work. That's what the book outlines.
Oh yeah, that's what I'm talking about. The 5 steps, indeed. So any thoughts on what the first two steps are for those who need to pick up the book and figure out the other three?
Oh, good. I'll tell you the first 2, and then we won't give the whole thing away. That's good, Dom. I always forget and I give the whole thing away. So first step, first step is really the most important step, and that's accepting that you probably do get triggered, even if you're not realizing it. By the time you finish the book, you'll have a little more humility to realize even I get triggered. And a lot of people know they get triggered and they dislike themselves for being triggerable, because they've been told they're too sensitive, they're too needy. Oh, and that's so unfortunate. But that happens a lot. And so what they get is, I've been told I'm too sensitive, but through doing the exercises in the chapter on how to accept that you are triggerable, you realize everybody is triggerable, and almost everybody's had that experience of being triggered. No matter what kind of parents you had, because no parents can give every child everything they need. It's just impossible. And so we're not blaming the parents for your triggers. We're just helping you realistically go, that really happened to me. And that really left me with a fear of abandonment or a not feeling safe in the world. And, that actually happened. So just coming to terms with what actually happened and being able to go, okay, that doesn't make me a less worthy person. And so when you see the stuff about how the brain works, because that's in that first step of trigger work, is it's normal to get triggered because we all have this fight, flight, freeze area in the brain. So I help people see that, and I help people see that there's all kinds of different ways that people show they're triggered, and it isn't just flying off the handle and yelling and punching walls. For example, when you have a judgmental thought about somebody, they say something to you and you go, well, that wasn't the right way to say that. You should have said it to me this way. If you would have said it to me this way, I would have heard it. So I call that a judgmental thought. That actually is a sign that you were triggered. And try not to be ashamed of that. Try to, and this is what that whole the whole book really helps you with, the first step of acceptance, because once you know how to work with the triggers, then you won't be so ashamed of them or afraid of them, and you'll realize they contain just the information you need now for the next stage in your growth. And if you didn't get triggered, if you were just a monk living by yourself, then you probably wouldn't get triggered. You wouldn't grow in the same way as by dealing with this annoying person who is your spouse. It's okay to feel annoyed sometimes. But when you do feel annoyed, inquire into that, and there'll be some good information for how you need to accept a part of yourself or love a part of yourself that's just hurting. We can't always not hurt. It's like a little child is going to come to the mommy with, oh, the kids wouldn't play ball with me today, they left me out. And what are you going to say to your little kid? You're going to say, oh, grow up, get back out there, which some ignorant parents do. But in the book, I teach you how to activate the good mother archetype. And so that once you have that good mother archetype who knows how to go, oh, honey, kind of like that. You don't have to say those words, but you kind of hug. Sometimes I like to hug myself or just pat myself on the chest. And it's like a reassuring, mothering, nurturing gesture. We all need to learn how to do that for ourselves. That's called self-compassion. And that's really the essence of this book, is you'll come out with more self-compassion. So that's step one. And then the second step is learning the early warning signs that tell you that you are about to get triggered. That's called your trigger signature. It's like, what do you think? Oh, why didn't he say it that way? That's a thought. What happened in your body? I started getting tension in my arms, almost like I wanted to punch something, and what happened in your emotions? Well, it was kind of anger, I guess I'd call it anger. So you identify just in words and in memories, what are some of the things that you typically do when you're starting to get triggered, so that you can then immediately pause and get some breathing and some spaciousness and some grounding going inside yourself. And then you'll be able to come from your higher brain, like we were talking about before. And so you can interrupt that whole runaway freight train set of trigger reactions, like, well, you shouldn't have done that. And then they defend themselves, and then you attack and they defend. And that's that whole runaway freight train thing that is very powerful. The ego really wants to get in that last punch or that last word, but we learn that no good can come of that, and that knowing your trigger signature, knowing these early warning signs, and knowing that, oh, that means I need to pause and self-calm and self-soothe, that gives you tremendous power to choose another path and to get your higher brain back online and not stay triggered. So the idea is, yes, accept your triggers and love yourself anyway for having them, but know that you don't have to be a slave to that automatic part of your brain. You can master your triggers. So how'd that sound, Don?
It sounds freaking fabulous. You can master your triggers. That's right, folks. You can master your triggers indeed. And I love the fact that you mentioned self compassion, because a lot of folks need that now more than ever, not just from each other, but heck, even themselves, self compassion. Because, like, the thing is, it's just the stuff that folks were dealing with before 2020, then 2020, now 2021, and then 2022. We're like, oh, God. Please don't drink the whole keg like 2021 did. Please don't do it.
Yeah.
Don't drink the whole bar.
Mm.
Can we have some reprieve? And it's like, oh yeah, self compassion. That's freaking amazing. And especially with the fact that it's all about helping folks not to be a doormat as well, because that's the thing too. It's like being able to handle circumstances at a higher level, basically getting your muscle up, but hey, not being basically a doormat for other people and circumstances as well.
Yeah. because people will do the shutdown and not say anything. That's a trigger reaction, and that results in them being a doormat. So I didn't mention that because most people think trigger is a big visible thing, but I'd say more people are shutdowners than act outers, actually, at least among the subculture that I run with, you know. Smart people, you know, we're kind of good at shutting down and being nice, but it's not always good to just be nice. There's a way to be kind and still be honest and talk about our own wants and care about others at the same time. So learning to do this trigger work helps us have space in our world for other people's needs as well as our own.
Ah, there we go. That's what I'm talking about, indeed. So, since you've been on a bit of an interview tour recently with this fabulous book that's extra shiny and extra green, is there a question that you wish you'd be asked more often? Heck, even about you or the book when you're on the guest side of the game on the microphone?
Well, sometimes people would ask me. I like it when somebody asks me, so what advice would you give couples if you could just give them one word of advice? So ask me that, Don. Ask me that, and I'll give you my answer.
One word of advice. After last year, folks need a whole book, but what's your piece of advice for couples?
Well, first, I want to say get the book From Triggered to Tranquil by Campbell. But once you've got that, one of the things I hope you will learn is it's very important to let your partner be unhappy with you sometimes. That's where we're headed, to let them have their own feel. That doesn't mean you're not supposed to care, but sometimes you just have to be able to tolerate that kind of discomfort. Talk about it, yes, but ultimately you can't control a partner's feelings all the time. So make it an aim to let your partner be unhappy with you.
That's what I'm talking about. That's powerful indeed. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. Heck, and then I guess figure out ways to learn from that experience too afterwards, if I'm not mistaken, right?
Absolutely. It doesn't mean you shouldn't talk about it, but be able to allow it to be there. And then once you've done the other 3 steps of trigger work that we didn't talk about, you'll learn how to use a trigger reaction that happens between 2 people to actually reveal the origin of the trigger and the unmet need that was underneath the trigger in a vulnerable way. And that harmonizes the 2 people and bonds them at a very deep level once they learn how to process triggers. And you will still have the triggers a lot of times just because of your differences, but you learn how to process them very quickly. And then you're not so afraid of them getting triggered or you getting triggered or a little bit of unhappiness, temporary unhappiness. Just know that you have the tools to get back into real connection, because that's where we want to live most of the time. I'm not saying no, tolerate pain all day, but you've heard the word codependence. Too many of us put too much attention on, is the other person happy with me? And mold their, oh, he wasn't happy when I did that. Okay, I better make a rule never to do that again. Rather than noticing that there's a trigger when you saw the other person was unhappy with you. You do some inner work with it, and that helps you learn that these moments of unpleasantness or unhappiness can be used to go much deeper with each other and to ask in a very vulnerable way, like, I need to feel I matter to you. I need to feel I'm enough for you. Those are the kind of intimate disclosures that come out of doing the trigger work, doing the self-compassion work, and coming back and deepening your intimacy through the process.
There you go. Deepening indeed. That's right. She's giving you all a giant bulldozer, y'all, a whole caterpillar bulldozer, y'all, so you can go as deep as possible. That's right indeed. Metaphorically speaking. Probably a bad metaphor, and I'm sticking with it like glue.
Got some visuals to it. And the last part of the book, just so people know that it's not just about couples and intimate relationships. I've got a chapter on what if you get triggered by your kids? What if you get triggered by a friend? What if you get triggered in a group meeting or a team meeting at work? And what if you get triggered by some of the things that are happening in the world today? So there's a chapter on each of those things to help you bring these tools into all kinds of situations that are part of everyday life.
Oh yeah, you can say that again, indeed. You can say that again, indeed.
We
Well,
all
speaking of,
we all need help with the world situation right now.
oh yeah, that's right. Yeah, we all can't just be panda bears chewing on bamboo in a heart shape. We just can't be doing that. It's not really ideal. Some folks want to be koala bears. And don't ask where the heck that idea came from, because I have no idea either.
I wonder where that came from. You got me thinking, well, what animal would I want? I came back with, I think I'd want to be a dolphin.
All right, so that means she's extra friendly with strangers at the pool. All right, I love it. Let me stop. Yeah, man. Well, speaking of spirit animals and random visuals, if your wonderful book from Trigger to Tranquil was a food item, what would it be and why?
Oh boy, that would be sauteed vegetables with all different colors in it and all different textures, because what we're looking for here is integrating all these different aspects of our humanity on the journey of learning to be more human.
Yeah, well, there we go. Some stir-fried goodness, baby. That's what I'm talking about. Sauteed vegetables, y'all. That's right. That's right indeed. That's right indeed. It's the veggies with some hotness, y'all. That's right. Some spice, maybe, too. That's right indeed. That's right. The good spice indeed. That's right. And everything nice indeed. Sweet. Well, we're coming down to the magical question that every guest gets to receive, and that is if you're to wake up tomorrow and you're 25 again, but this time you're in the current year with all of your knowledge and experience, what advice would you give to yourself?
Mm, mm. Don't get married so young. Really. I got married when I was 21. So actually, if I was talking to my 25-year-old self, I might say, give yourself a break before you get married again, because I was divorced, I guess, by the time I was 25, because 21 was pretty damn young to get married. But if I knew then all that I know now, I'm really sure that I could have made that first marriage work just fine. I just didn't know all these things then, because he wasn't a bad guy. I just wasn't sophisticated. And that's the way a lot of people are. We just don't know we don't know what we can realistically expect in a relationship. So get my book. That's what I would tell myself. We'll get a book like mine, if there were any there. And don't get married until you've digested all that information. I just wasn't ready.
Oh, yeah. That's right. Rock solid advice indeed. That's right. So you heard that right, folks. So buy one book to eat and then buy one to read. There you go. That's right. Metaphorically. So I can digest it.
I'll send you another book to eat. I know you read that one, so I'll
Oh, man.
It's colorful. I talked about the sauteed vegetables. I got one here. I mean, it's very colorful. It looks like vegetables. I didn't realize that.
Oh, yeah. Yep, that's why your answer made perfect sense to me, because, yeah, I got it in front of me, too. Yeah, Zoom doesn't like wonderful books in front of its Zoom background, so, yeah, gotta freaking love it. But
Yeah,
it's
you've got
all...
that amazing background back there. I want to get one of those.
Yeah, shoot. I'll probably shoot it over to you without the whole branding, if you like, if you're a fan of purple and the blue and the shiny.
Yeah, can you? Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah,
yeah.
without Dom Brightman on there.
Yeah, don't worry. I'm not going to have the branding on there. I'll be nice, even though you probably wouldn't use it anyway. It's like, hey, he's trying to be sneaky, trying to promote his site. What's wrong with him? I ain't doing this. I'm Susan. I ain't Dom. What's wrong with him? Oh, man. But for those who want to keep in touch with the sensational Susan, buy copies of all of her books and invite you to speak at whatever conferences or events, heck, even podcasts to get the good word out there of the work you're doing. What's the best way for folks to do so?
Well, my website is susancampbell.com. That's spelled Campbell. So that's probably the best way. You can then contact Dr. Susan. There's a little contact thing, or you can sign up for my monthly newsletter. And let me say, if any of you listening out there were stimulated by some of this, I give a free monthly group coaching call the first Tuesday of every month. And if you sign up for my newsletter, you'll get the information about how to join the call. And you can get free advice every month for the rest of your life, or for the rest of my life. Let me put it that way. So I really want to serve. I'm at that stage of life where I really want to give back to the world. And so, I do quite a few. If you sign up for the newsletter, I do quite a few free programs that you can tune into.
Well, there you have it, folks. Definitely head over to Susan Campbell's site. Head over to the Good Doctor's site, y'all. It's going to be a link to that in the show notes and link to the book as well. And be sure to subscribe to her YouTube channel as well, because she's got some great content there, too. Some wonderful past speeches. Heck, even one interview she did with one woman for a book where it was tips for people pleasers. And you'll hear all sorts of good stuff on there, especially how Dr. Susan tapped into her aggression that she didn't know that she had in the first place. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, any parting words for the folks before we close up shop, Dr. Susan?
Whatever pain might come your way, if you start with that, or whatever frustration might come your way, if you just start by being curious about that and kind of bringing that inside of yourself, making some space for it, and just sitting with it with curiosity and giving it a little bit of breath, you will learn so much about yourself. We just don't realize that if we sit quietly with a painful emotion and give it some breath and give yourself some self-regulation, that's some self-soothing while you're feeling the pain, you will learn whatever that pain is here to teach you how to learn. Nature gives us everything we need to heal ourselves. If we just don't try to manipulate ourselves to not need the healing. If we just realize, ouch, this hurts. Let me sit with this and see what information I get if I just open up and inquire. So the book teaches you some steps and gives you some more guidance, but I really want to let you know that it's quite simple. I think it just follows the laws of nature. So this healing work that I've been studying and teaching, it's a very natural process.
How's it going, my friend? I'm so glad you made it to the end. That shows that you are an uncommon finisher, and I am so grateful for you sharing your ears, your attention, and your time to this wonderful podcast. to do something that'll take yourself to the next level. And for everybody else involved in this wonderful program, share it with at least 3 people in your network so that way more folks can not only catch the fire that is on this podcast, but can also be inspired to be their best. Advance others to advance yourself.